Tom's put a lot of work into this with Jim Piccolo and a few other folks. And so if you guys have recommendations and such after you go through a few of these webinars, please don't hesitate to let us know new ideas so we can always make this better for everybody. So, but again, thank you for being here today. As we go along, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to chime in. It'll help if you'll tell us who your name is so we have an idea who's asking the question. And at the end, we'll take questions as well. If you would make sure that if you're going to have any conversations on a phone or what have you, or you're going to type on your computer, you may want to mute your side so that we don't hear all the clicking and the conversation and so on. We don't want to hear you say something too embarrassing. So anyway, so we'll get started here. The first few slides are the some of the nuts and bolts of this system. Dave Ticker is unable to join us today, but Jim Piccolo from District 1, or District 1 Director, is going to join us along with Tom and myself. I'm Robert Polk. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Robert Polk. I'm the Everett School District Athletic Director. I've been up here in Everett for about 11 years, and I was able to work with Tom last year on this project, and I'm very pleased to be able to help out again this year. These are a few people that helped put together the mentoring program for our state. If you don't know, there's a number of folks across the country who will sign in and are interested in what's going on with our program right now. This is a reminder of the webinar schedule, the outline for the development, getting into the webinar, which you've already done, so you guys are good to go. And a reminder, a number of our colleagues are not able to participate in the live webinar, so make sure you let them know and remind them that all of these will be posted within 24 hours on the WSSAAA website. There's a link at the top of the page, and they can go back and listen to these anytime they want to, or you yourself can go back and refer to them if you have thoughts and want to remember some different things. Okay, so today we're going to talk a bit about coaches meetings and a few other items along those lines. I just wanted to show everybody, this is something I've been doing in Everett for about 10 years now, where I try to get coaches in for a preseason coaches meeting at the start of each season. To the left, you will see an outline of the presentation I put together this past season for the fall. And we try to hit a few different things to try to help our coaches be the best coaches they can be while managing their risk and helping kids achieve as well as they can. One thing that our school district in Everett has been working on is how to work with kids in poverty to help them be as productive as possible. And so that's one of the things we talked about the positive negative comment ratio for kids and what they experience at home, and how our coaches can add to that to help build their confidence. We always talk about boundaries, negative coaching behavior, and acting professionally with our kids. Boundary invasion is a big thing in the news. We hear this often. It's something as athletic directors we need to remind our coaches about how to conduct themselves, to protect themselves and to protect our kids. Harassment, intimidation, bullying, of course, is a very important thing to talk about. We talked about positive coaching behaviors. This year we went into philosophies about playing time, particularly at the sub-varsity level, because we had some concerns last year. Trying to get our coaches to talk to kids about their pathway to their profession. Again, this is something our district's been focusing on in making kids college and career ready, and encouraging coaches to talk about their story. Our coaches come from a number of different backgrounds. They're not all teachers or administrators. And so how did you become a police officer? How did you get into the construction trade? Those are things our kids need to hear about so they know what options they might have in the future. Talked a bit about the NCAA course requirements, public relations, dealing with parents, communicating with our athletic directors at the building level, reminders about the athletic code, and so on down the line, reminders about FERPA and HIPAA and other trainings that they have to take care of with bloodborne pathogens in our district, harassment, intimidation, bullying training that our coaches and all employees have to go through. Yeah. And then a bit about ASB and WIA laws. So this is just a sample. I'm happy to send this to you if you're interested to give you an idea. I probably left some things out. There might be better presentations out there. But I think it's important as athletic directors, we are the leaders of the department, and as leaders we need to make sure our coaches know and understand what we expect and also give them the tools to be successful to help our kids be successful.
Robert, how will you do that with your coaches? Do you do that like in a one-day meeting or do it over a period of several months, or how do you do that?
Yeah. So what I've done in the last few years is I try to hold this meeting at the start of each season, high school season. So let me take a step back. I do it differently for high school and for differently for middle school. High school, I try to do at the start of each season. So I held one in the fall in August. I did it prior to our league meetings, which are held in our school district. Every fall coach was required to attend. If they did not attend, then the building athletic director had to schedule a make-up time with them to make sure the information was covered. I'll set up a meeting in the winter and the spring for those sports coaches as well. If I have high school coaches who teach multiple seasons, I only require them to attend one time out of respect for their time. As far as middle school goes, many of our middle school coaches coach multiple sports, and so I hold one meeting. This year I did it the afternoon of our first day of school, and again, all coaches are required to be there. I require our volunteer coaches to attend as well. And again, if they can't make it for whatever reason, they have a conflict, we work with them to get them to make that up. So moving on, the next piece, 14 legal duties. And this is a document that Tom Doyle provided me, and something that we use in a number of our LTI courses. You, as an athletic director, need to be aware of these, and you need to make your coaches aware. These are areas where in courts of law, coaches or other educationally related institutions or parts of the education system have been found to be negligent through the courts of law. So, for example, duty to plan. Are our coaches planning their practices? Are they looking ahead for any conflicts with fields? Are they looking ahead at planning around, if they have a field issue, how do they plan around the safety of that field and working with them? The second one, duty to supervise, probably is the biggest one that we all need to be aware of. More issues occur with kids if they're not properly supervised. That's where harassment and bullying can take place. That's where kids are using their cell phones inappropriately. That's where kids might be using marijuana in the back of the bus. What are we doing to make sure our kids are behaving themselves? If there's an adult in the vicinity, they tend to act a lot better. And I'm not going to read through all these. I'll just kind of skim through them. Duty to assess athletes for practice and competition. Safe playing, maintaining safe playing conditions. Your coaches need to inform us when they have a concern about their courts or fields so that those issues can be taken care of. If we know we have a problem and we still use the field or the equipment, then we are definitely liable. Providing proper equipment, particularly the sport of football, we need to make sure that equipment fits properly. We got to make sure it's been reconditioned properly. We need to make sure catcher's gear in baseball and softball fit properly. So we need to make sure our kids are safe. Proper instruction, matching athletes by size. We want to make sure the really big kid doesn't go against the smallest kid in different types of drills. So we have to make sure our coaches are thinking through that. Proper conditioning, a duty to warn. We typically do this through the paperwork and eligibility paperwork that we give to our families, but I'm pretty certain that the kids nor the parents read through the information. So we need to find other ways to make sure everyone is forewarned of the dangers of the sport they participate in. I tell my coaches that they must hold a preseason parent meeting, and at that time they must read the risks of injury forms for their particular sport to make sure that everybody has heard it a second time in case they haven't read it the first time. Require that athletes are covered by insurance. Duty to provide emergency care, so this is why we're required to have our coaches certified in first aid and CPR. developing an emergency response plan. This is probably, to me, one of the greatest challenges. We have coaches all over our campus. There's a variety of situations or environments that they are in that are difficult to control. During the spring, nearly all of our sports are outdoors. How do we control an outdoor environment where our athletes and coaches are spread over acres of fields? But we have to think about this, and we have to plan for this in case an emergency does occur. We have to be able to respond. Provide proper transportation.
Robert,
yes.
Robert, let me jump in on that one for a second.
Okay.
And we have Bruce Brown on here from Ohio too, a different Bruce Brown than our Washington one, and he may have some ideas on a couple of these things too. But I was recently at a conference where they were talking in Oregon, and that what they're doing is they are training their teams, and so they have a volleyball team, for instance, and they are training 3 of the kids from the volleyball team to do CPR. 3 of the kids from the volleyball team to understand how to use the AED, the defibrillator. 3 of the kids are being taught to handle the phoning of 911, and 3 of the kids are being trained to go and wait for the emergency vehicle at the place that it would come so that they can get it access. So what they're doing is they're teaching an emergency plan to the kids, because the bottom line is that it's the likelihood is more that the adult is going to have the heart attack than the kids are going to have a problem with it. And so they're actually developing an emergency response plan where every team at every level, takes a little bit of time during a practice session and teaches those particular skills so that they have other people trained to help them as well. So there's great opportunities to do things out there and include the kids as well.
Tom, this is Bruce, and that's a great point. A lot of times coaches feel like that just takes up a lot of time, and really it's a very short exercise. The analogy that we draw to our coaches on that very topic, and that's again at all levels, whether it be varsity all the way down through middle school, is this is no different than what your schools do and what the students do in schools when they practice a tornado drill or a fire drill. Everybody has roles, everybody has responsibilities, and we require our coaches to practice that, and it's a very quick piece, but you do have to go through that process. Again, worst case scenario, you don't want to be in a court of law where someone looks across the table and say, Coach, tell me again, what protocol did you establish in the event something like this happened, and all there is crickets going at that point.
Right. Okay, thanks, Robert.
Thank you. You bet.
I think one last thing on that, if you don't mind, on the supervisional part. It was brought up at our WSSAAA meeting, and it really sort of hit me a little bit thinking about it. We don't supervise enough, and that's one area that we can really get hammered on. Let me give you one example. You send a track bus full of 50 kids and 1 coach, because the other coach says, oh, I'm going to drive there and I'll see you there because I have something else I need to go afterwards. So you send 1 bus with 1 coach, 50 kids, and then you got an issue. Supervision part, you need to have that covered in a better, more rounded type of way for those type of situations.
Hi. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Pick. Someone's having a phone conversation, so if you mute your mic, that'd be great. So last 2, duty provides proper transportation. The last couple of years when our schools were going through the budget crises, we got pretty creative as athletic directors.
Boys soccer? No.
Boys soccer? You guys mute your phone, please. Now that things are getting a little bit more relaxed, it'll be interesting to see how people swing back to make sure our kids are properly transported. But we have to make sure we're doing everything we can to get our kids to the contest in a safe manner. We cannot depend on kids driving other kids. We have to be careful about putting too much expectation on parents. So make sure you speak with your risk management insurance company about anything that you do with your transportation to make sure they are going to cover you with your plan. And then the last one really falls on administration and athletic directors. And that's our duty to select, train, and supervise our own coaches. Hard to find coaches at times, and we got to make sure that whoever we hire, that they are the best for the job, and that they have the skill set to do the work, and that we make sure we give them the tools to be successful. One of the training pieces would be just talking about these legal duties. Also making sure that they get access to other professional development opportunities, not just the X's and O's, but really about the developing relationships with kids, working with parents, proper dealing with ASB law, handling money, and so on. All those pieces are things that can get coaches in a lot of trouble, and it's on our shoulders to make sure we give them the tools to be as successful as possible. Okay. So, any questions on those 14 duties? Anything else to add out there? Okay. So, more about coaches meetings. You obviously will have some school district requirements, so you need to make sure you're checking with your principals, maybe your area superintendents, to make sure everything is that they want covered, that's important to them, are covered. These school district requirements might include hiring practices. So make sure you're working closely with human resources, and what processes do they want you to follow when you're hiring a coach, from the applications that are used to screening the application files. How many reference checks do you need? How many letters of recommendation does a candidate need? There should be a standard from your human resources department to help guide you. Athletic department policies. Again, you might inherit some of these things. You're going to see needs as you work along through your career. But these policies are also often driven by your school district board policies. So again, a conversation with your principal and or your area superintendents about the different policies that can overlap when you're educating your coaches, particularly those that are not educators per se. We have to make sure that they know and understand what those pieces are. Concussions and medical care, always on the front burner, always in the news cycle. It seems that every other night there's at least one news story about concussions and risk of injury in youth athletics, and we need to make sure we have a good handle on this. The greatest challenge in this area is probably for our middle school programs, where we don't have athletic trainers to help manage all this. And so we have to give as much information to our coaches as we can. The National Federation of High Schools has a very good concussion management education program or class that's free of charge. If you go to nfhslearns.com, you'll see a list of different courses that your coaches can take. I encourage you to look at that as well. We also need to remember that if a kid is injured in our athletic programs, or anywhere for that matter, and sees a doctor for those injuries, we have to make sure the kids are not returning to play until the doctor has cleared them. A lot of times our coaches overlook this piece, and if we let a kid come back too early and they re-injure themselves, we can pose some legal problems for ourselves. It's all about making sure kids are safe and healthy, and we have to do everything we can to protect them. Need to become familiar with the state and league rules. Our WA handbook's pretty thick. There's a lot of nuances in there, a lot of wrinkles that we need to be aware of. Lean on your mentors. Go to the people that have been in the business for a while. Ask them questions, and don't be afraid of looking silly. You want to get it right. You don't know it all. I've been doing this for quite a few years now. I still have to ask people different questions to make sure I'm getting it right, so never hesitate to do that. And your league rules are probably published in a handbook that your league has developed. If you don't have one, I encourage you to start working on one so that everybody knows the rules they're playing with and has the proper guidelines to make sure everyone's on the same page.
And Robert, this is Tom. I used to do one of two things. I would either get every coach a copy of the WIAA handbook, or at the very least, I would copy off the pages for their particular sport. so that they definitely were able to see those. And then any of the other rules that I thought were critical to a coach, like you can't take your team off the floor if you're upset with the officiating or whatever, those kinds of things. I would make sure that I went through, read that book, and knew exactly which rules each of the coaches need to be aware of. I was pretty confident that coaches weren't going to sit down and read the whole book, but if I were giving them the ones that I thought were critical to their particular roles, that usually was very helpful.
And to add to that, I know the WIA online rules clinics have really developed and included some WIA rule slides, but we need to remember that only our head coaches are required to go through those rules clinics, and your school district might require assistants and volunteers to do this. But if that's not the case, we need to make sure our JV and freshman coaches and middle school coaches are aware of the rules as well, because often that's where coaches are pulling kids off the court, as Tom alluded to. They might be the ones that try to run a practice during the off season when we're not supposed to have contact with the kids in that sport. So we need to make sure all the way up and down the line everybody's aware. Communication with parents. This is another area where I require my coaches to have the preseason meeting. That's one place they can communicate. But another thing that we do in Everett is, excuse me for just a minute, I think I lost it, is we have a form that that we give in our eligibility packets about the processes that we use for communicating between coaches and parents. We try to help guide the conversation and encourage kids to have the conversation with coaches first. If things don't go well there, then parents absolutely can get involved and then work up the line to the athletic director and the principal and so on, rather than jumping straight to the superintendent. Now, we can't control everybody. There's going to be parents who will jump straight to the superintendent no matter what we ask them to do. But for the most part, the parents in our district at least have been very respectful of this line of communication. The way we sell it is we're trying to teach kids some adult skills, and there's going to be times when they have to have challenging conversations with people in positions of authority, but they have to learn how to advocate for themselves. That's one of the beauties of athletics. It's a safe place to take chances, and if you fail, it's okay. It's not fatal. But at the same time, we need to encourage our coaches to be very open-minded and supportive of the kid when they come to them with a concern. They cannot be dismissive of the kid's concerns, because to them it's very real. But so anyway, so this is a document that we use in Everett, and you probably may have seen these at other places as well.
Robert, this is Del Dittis, Emerald Ridge High School.
Hi, Del.
Hi. Just on that last point, sometimes as athletic directors and even upper level administration, we get blindsided by issues that come to us, and if at all possible, coaches should be asked to forewarn us, let us know that this may be coming. We don't like to have to be surprised by things that may be serious in nature, and so I think it's important that coaches realize that they need to contact us as soon as possible if something that's going to take place.
Great point. Very great point.
I think sometimes with this Jim Piccolo, even though it says Tom Doyle on there, it's Jim Piccolo. On that communication with parents, I think it's really crucial. There's going to be some heated battle of the moments, and they want to address you right at that moment, or they want to address you as a coach right at that moment. It's really, you have to defend your coach and get in front of that parent and say, no, we have a 24-hour rule or whatever it is, the rule that you have, and you need time to be calm. I need to be time to calm. We have to have calm demeanors in the conversation to which to address your issues, not the heat of the moment. Even though the parent is really excited or upset or whatever it may be at that point, it's really important to set those guidelines up there. And even with your best plan, you're going to end up with some of those issues that you're going to have to really try to deal with. And more than not, the parent will calm down and say, I was really out of line. I do have a concern, but I'm really out of line for what I did. So that communication of how they can actually access and know that your administration is going to support you, because they will go right to the principal, they'll go right to the superintendent, whatever avenue it is, and skip you as the AD. long as your other administrators up there say no, you got to go back to the AD to get it solved to the lowest level. You got to make sure those are important to those parents.
So last few items on this slide, cutting policies. Basically, your coaches need to have a plan, and they need to be able to articulate the plan to you, because they need to also present this plan to the kids they're going to be practicing with and having tryouts with, and also to the parents. Cuts are one of the most challenging things in sports. It's difficult on coaches to tell a kid they're not good enough, but it's part of life, and the way we handle that is very important. There's a number of different ways to handle it, and that's not really the conversation. The conversation is, how are you going to handle it as a coach? How are you going to communicate that to the parents and the kids? And you need to make sure you stick to your plan so that no one's surprised by anything. So it's just making sure coaches are thinking about their philosophy and how things go together. Transportation, every school district.
One more thing on the cutting. It was really crucial for me when I talked to my coaches that not only did they have the plan on those sports that we're going to cut, and they set a timeline when certain things were going to happen. But it was real important that they sat down with that athlete personally, one-on-one, and explained to him or her over the process how they're progressing, 2, whether they're on that bubble, and then 3, if they are going to get cut. It's a face-to-face conversation. It's nothing you post up on the wall, nothing you send by text, or nothing you send home with them and say, Johnny isn't on the team anymore. It had to be a personable, one-on-one conversation with that athlete to really explain why. Okay.
All right. So transportation, again, each district handles their transportation in different ways. You as the AD, make sure you have a handle on what your transportation department expects and know the policies that they require. For example, in Everett, our schools have some vans that we can use for like golf and tennis and so on. All of our coaches that want to drive those vans must get a Type 2 certification through our transportation department. That was a state requirement about 10 years ago. The state removed that requirement, but our district is one that's continued with that requirement. What policy does your district have? And if you don't know, you need to find out. What is the negotiated contract between the district and your drivers? I know in one school district local to here, if more than 8 kids are going to an event, the district is required to use a school bus instead of 2 vans. What is your collective bargaining agreement in that area? You need to know what that's all about. And then with all that, making sure your coaches know what those policies are so that they communicate well and get those requests in a timely manner. And then keeping the AD informed at all times. Dell alluded to that. When we have hot button items going on, we need to know up front. But the other part is, as the season progresses, how's the team developing? What injuries are going on? What attitude challenges are coming through on the team? And about this time of year in the fall, we're starting to get to postseason. We're about 3 or 4 weeks away. How does the team look? Do they have a chance to qualify? If they do qualify, where will they be playing in their tournament games? The coaches need to help the AD stay informed. We have a number of other things going on. We don't have time to check the standings every other day to see how our soccer or volleyball teams are doing. And so I recommend that you put this on your coaches, maybe it's a weekly email. Things are going great, looking great for postseason. Looks like we'll be playing at XYZ school in the first round, but we'll see as things go along. And at least you are aware, you've got it recorded. You can help them plan ahead and be successful in putting everything together. Postseason can be very hectic, finding buses, and if you have to travel a great distance, setting up food for the kids. And so the more you know up front, the easier it is for you to help those programs. Anything else to
on that keeping it informed, I always told my coaches, don't put me in a position that I can't defend. I'm here to help those coaches do the best they can, but if you put me in a position I can't defend, how can I help you? And I may not be able to. type of thing because you put me in that position. The other thing is, when it comes to postseason, on those sports, I'm going to give you an example. On cross country, you may have 2 coaches, you may have 4 coaches, depending on the size of your program, for both boys and girls. Let's take example. If I have 4 coaches and boys and girls cross country, 2 boys, 2 girls, and I have 1 girl that makes it and 1 boy goes, do I send all 4 coaches? Do I not? You need to be very explicit up front where that line is. And if I only have, male coaches or females, are you going to have a female representative somewhere down the line there that's going to travel with that team to help out with those young ladies?
Okay. So anything else from anybody?
No.
All right. So moving on to the next slide. So Tom Doyle's going to take over here and talk about mission.
Okay, and I'll take the screen back here because I got a couple things too that I want to do here. But one of the things that we've tried to do with these webinars is have 3 different sections. So the part that Robert just went through with you really is the nitty-gritty. What do you need to be doing right now to be successful? The next section is this section which we call discovery, which is, okay, now I got to be thinking down the road a little ways too. As I start catching my breath, I got to be thinking of what that bigger picture is. And when we start talking about what the big picture is, we get talking about, why do we have high school athletics? It's a critical question that we understand why high school athletics is part of the educational program as opposed to just being club sports out there. We could let the club community take over and they could do the whole thing, but there are critical reasons why it is important to have athletics be part of the high schools. And I think it's important that we begin to start thinking some of those things through. So just to give you an example, and you can Google search and you can find all sorts of things on this, but here's a statement. Interscholastic athletics is a co-curricular activity. Now, first of all, it's important to understand that it is co-curricular, meaning it is part of the curriculum, as opposed to at times in the past, I think we've sometimes called athletics an extracurricular activity, meaning that's outside of the curriculum. It's critical that we as athletic directors, especially when we're talking with our administrators, we're talking with our faculty. I think I said one time, I try to go to faculty meetings and make sure that I make some kind of a statement about the importance of athletics at all of those, because it's important for the faculty to understand, too, that it is part of the co-curricular activity, and as part of that, as an integral part of that, it's critical that it be supported. As this one says, it provides not only an avenue for the development of athletic skills, but for the development of total person. We look at all of those things that athletics can provide for our student athletes, and we really are developing the total person, not just an athlete who's going to go on and play in college. We're going to teach life skills, as it says, responsibility, accountability, team building, fair play, determination. All of those things come out of our experience of high school athletics and may or may not come out of a club experience, which is why what we're doing is so critical and why we need to make sure that we are staying focused on the importance of high school athletics and not the picture of getting kids into college and playing college sports and the whole business. At some point, you're going to need to write your own philosophy statement. And I wrote it I was the athletic director at Seattle Prep for many years, and so I began working on, what I believe to be the philosophy of athletic programs. And I think you want to be thinking about this in the next year or two, developing, if you don't already have one that the school has done, that you inherited. Why is it that interscholastic athletics is important to what we're doing, to the mission that we have? And there's all sorts of things. Certainly we're promoting the physical, mental, moral, and social and emotional well-being of our student athletes. All of those things have to be included in it. We're teaching them self-identity, learning respect. You can go through this whole list of things, and you can find these every place. But think about coming up with and developing your own. Why is it that we have these programs, and why is it that you think it's critical that you be involved in it? Why is it critical that your coaches do such a great job with kids? Is it because we're trying to get him into college? Is it because we're trying to win a state championship? Or is it because it is part of the extracurricular, the co-curricular program of our schools, and it's so critical that we do it in a positive and well thought out fashion? So you can come up with all sorts of things. You know, what are they going to learn? Well, they're going to learn to work with others. You know, why is that critical? They're going to learn to be successful. You know that the successful person isn't the one that wins all the time, but the successful person is the one that gets back up after getting knocked down. What a critical lesson that we teach our kids. Developing sportsmanship, to try to get better at whatever it is that we're doing, to enjoy athletics, to develop desirable personal habits. There's others, many, many others that we can include in here, but it's really important that we have thought out why it is that we're having a program, and you know what is the most important part of that for our kids. As a result of that, once we've developed that, or we have it already that we've inherited in our schools, it makes it much easier for us to stay focused. And I've shown you this slide before in a different presentation, and I'm going to put it back up here so that it comes in properly. But we need to be focused on whatever it is that is the mission of our school and of our athletic program. And that's why it's important that you have a mission statement out there in front of you. It's important that you know what your mission is. And I think I said this one time recently that I was at a WIA workshop, and there were probably 75 or 80 of us there, and I asked the question, how many of you know your school's mission statement? And you know, it was a very small percentage that said, yeah, I know what it is, and I can tell you what it is. But we really need to know that. Robert talked about parents. You know, how powerful is it when a parent comes in to complain about playing time, when you can say, hey, show me in your, here's what our school mission statement is, that we're trying to develop such and such, you know, you lay it out for them. Tell me where it says in this mission statement that your kid's playing time is the critical issue here. What we're trying to teach your kid is how to deal with adversity, how to grow, and how to be part of a team, and know what their role is in the team, and those kinds of things. It just makes that whole conversation a lot easier if you have that mission in mind as you go. When we run into problems, it's usually because some crisis occurs off to the side here someplace, and we go out and solve it. Kid's drinking, or a kid gets suspended or kicked out of a game, or whatever it might be, and there's a crisis, and we go out over here and we solve that problem. If we don't bring it back to the mission and try to make sure that everything comes back towards that mission statement, what we end up with is we end up heading somewhere towards the mission, but we're not exactly centered on what it is that we're trying to do. So as we solve problems, we always want to bring that focus back to our purpose. Why is it that we have high school athletics? Why is it that we're doing this here in the school? How is it going to help the student athlete to become a better person and a more productive member of our school and our society? Those are the kinds of questions that we need to keep asking. Those are the reasons that we have high school athletics. Not to get kids' names in the paper, not to get kids college scholarships, not to win state championships or district championships or any of that. It's to teach a lot of life's lessons to our kids. We need to keep that in mind. We need our coaches to keep that in mind, and we need to keep reminding everybody that's involved in the process, whether it's faculty, whether it's parents, whether it's the athletes, exactly why it is that we have interscholastic, co-curricular high school activities. Anybody want to add anything on that?
Tom, one of the things I've done in coaches meetings is I've given them a copy of my coach's handbook, and the first page in there talks about our mission. The second page is my personal philosophy. I've articulated it about 10 points in that page. And everything else in that coach's handbook is built on those things. And again, it's important, as you've articulated yourself, it's important that they understand why we do what we do.
Great. And again, that's not something that, you know, some of you may have inherited something like that. But what we're saying here is in the big picture, as you're looking down the road 3 to 5 years, you want to make sure that you're in the process of developing that. And everything that you're doing today, all these little nitty-gritty details, if you keep in mind a focus of, first of all, the school mission statement, and then secondly, as you're developing your own personal philosophy, how that all fits together, it's really going to make a difference to you as you go. Okay. The next part of this, I'm going to turn over to Pick, but what we're trying to do is say, okay, now we've survived the first few days, the first few months, we're starting to think out a little bit, but what do we need to really do to be successful here? Jim, you want to take that over?
Yeah, it's really important to understand that your other fellow athletic directors in that first part are there to help you, and they're here to help each other. As long as I've been in this business, I still call on fellow athletic directors to make sure that even in this job that I'm doing it right, I'm doing it correctly, am I making the right type of call here, am I giving the right type of suggestions, help me with this rule I'm quite not understanding. There's a lot of questions, and the thing probably more than anything I've ever learned in athletics is don't be afraid to ask the question, to go out and search it before you make that decision. Just the other day I called Tommy up, and I know I was venting on him, but he was listening to me, as he will do to me. He will vent to me, and we listen to each other because we're not tied into whatever I'm going to bring or he brings forward, to make sure that we're on the right perspective, on the right big picture item, on the right direction to which to give advice to another athletic director or to a league or to a fellow another district director. So help each other. I was on the phone here just before this all started helping another athletic director see the big picture that he was emotionally caught into in a decision versus seeing all sides or as many sides of the picture as you can before you make that decision. When we got done with the conversation, his answer was, you know, I sometimes just get too emotionally caught up in the decision versus sitting back, taking the information and digesting it and then making a good decision or getting information about that. So help each other out. We're not here, they're not here, we're not here to help stick you out someplace and say, you know, that school screwed up. You can't do that because what goes around is going to come around, and we're all in the same business, which to help the kids. The other part is no one in your school really knows what you do, and this is really a true statement, probably more today than it was when I and Tommy and some of the other ones first became athletic directors. In the old process, it used to be a coach, then you became an athletic director, and then worked your way to vice principal, principal, and so forth down the line. Today, your principals don't know much or have not had much experience with athletics, and if they did have it was a small window. They don't know what you go through. The superintendent does not know what you go through. It is your job to help communicate to them what you do on a daily basis, because they are your backup as administrative teams when those hard decisions come forward. They're there to help you, but if they don't understand and they don't know, then it's in that same situation you put them in. You put them in a position they can't defend or don't know how to defend in helping you with those crucial situations. So it's important that we communicate all the time to parents. It's important that we communicate what type of job you really do, or what an AD does, or what my principal does in helping understanding the total importance of athletics in the school realm. I can't say enough of that, because that is your team. And which relates to me, remember your coaches are your team. If you're a team of basketball of 5, 6 players, you got to think your coaches of 5 or 6 coaches or 20 coaches or 60 coaches or 90. That's just your team. It's just a bigger team. And how you want to communicate to your team, how you're going to coach your team, how you're going to prepare that team of coaches is all important in that big picture that Tom talked about with that philosophy a little bit. What is it you really stand for? What does the athletic department really stand for? And there's people out there which to really help you. Mutual help and support is really important in that part. The coach needs to know that you're there for them. As I told my coaches, your job is to coach. I'm not going to tell you how to coach. I'm not going to tell you to do the X and O. That's not my ability. But I'm going to help do all the other things outside. So all you have to do is walk in and coach that contest or do that practice or whatever it may be. I'll do all the transportation. I'm going to do all the facility things. I'm going to make sure the game's ready to go. You got to go out and coach. So they know that I'm here to support them, not hanging them out, saying, it's your job to go do the bus. It's your job to go do the schedules. It's your job. I never did that. I don't think that was important. I think their job was more important to do. I would get their input, but I think it was more job is to take care of the kids. Ask each other, do you really want to go down that road? That's a real key question. Do you really want to go down that road? It means, do you really want to take that path? And I'll give you an example. There's a little situation in one of my leagues that I'm dealing with right now, a real simple little situation, but it can be a big one, that they may want to go off of what they said in a June meeting towards their league minutes, which took a long conversation to get to. It took a long time. Do you really want to go down that road or not? And I had another fellow athletic director, district director, come and help me with that decision, only to show another point of view, which to come into it, to really, you really want to make this decision or don't want to make the decision. Well, they made the decision. And it really made no difference which way they wanted to go. They were just going to make the decision. It would be good no matter which way they went. Well, now they want to change that position. It's 3 months later, 4 months later, want to change what their league and what they made a decision to do. Because when they get different information, they think it's information, they want to change it. Well, you got to remember, your league minutes and your league direction is that vision that's given you to go that straight arrow that Tom showed you. All of a sudden now you got little branches coming out and say, well, I don't like that because I want to try something else because the numbers tell me I can do something else. And I don't care what I said last time. I want to do it this way. It really becomes that emotional thing. And so you ask yourself, do you really want to go down that road, or do you really think, your minutes are your minutes, your league policies are your league policies, stay by them. That's your line to which to guide you as a AD. That's a line to which to guide you as a district director or as a district director or a league. You're going to get those parents that are going to throw things at you like crazy. You've got to hold the line. They may not like the answer, but they know that you're going to hold the line to which you're going to be and not try to wave one side or the other. So that question, do you really want to go down this path? Do you really want to hit that? Is a really an important question as you're listening to parents and athletes and your coaches. Do we really want to go there, or do we really want to stay where we want to go? And it's really becomes that team. What I mean by your team, again, is your coaches helping you see that vision that they all want to go down and we're going to buy into and head forward in making the change of your athletic program. Questions on that, working with other ADs?
Dick, this is Tom. I think one of the things on that is, as an athletic director, you are the coach of the coaches. And quite often, a coach will come to you and ask you to do something that you may or may not be quite sure is the right thing to be doing. It's your job to educate them. We had a case last year where in a softball game, a player got hit by a pitch in the head. The umpire told the kid that she was done for the game. Now, the National Federation rule doesn't say the umpire has the right to do that, that the kid can come out, be evaluated, and could potentially go back in the game. And so the coach wanted to protest the game because the umpire had told this kid that she couldn't come back in and wanted to replay the game from that point. Now, the question Jim's talking about, do you really want to go down that road? Do you really want to protest over the fact that a kid got hit in the head and an adult did what he thought was the best, safest thing to do? And you want to protest and say he didn't have the right to do that? Sometimes you got to ask yourself the questions of, okay, we might win the war, we might actually win this protest, or we might win the battle, I could say it right, win the battle, but do you really win the war by doing that? So yes, you could win the protest, but what are you saying about protecting kids in this situation where there's a potential concussion by making a statement like that? So you need to be aware of what it is that you're doing. Don't automatically, ask for the protest or whatever it is just because a coach asked for it. Make sure that you can justify it in terms of that mission before you move ahead with it. I think the other thing is Jim talked about supporting each other, and he talked a little bit earlier about a 24-hour rule. I've always believed that you need to take some time before you respond to people. So, because quite often the emotion comes in, and if you have the opportunity to say, let me get back to you. Give me 10 minutes and I'll get back to you. And you can just calm down a little bit, or you can call up another person like Jim and I do with each other sometimes and say, you know, hey, let me just walk through this with you. And then by the time we're done, I'm okay and I'm ready to go talk to the next person again. So think about that 24-hour rule in terms of taking a little bit of time to either get some input from somebody else or to at least calm down before you finally respond to an issue. Other thoughts? Okay. Anybody have questions on any of the topics that we've brought up today? Okay. Hearing that again, if you have questions, get a hold of one of us offline. You can do that, and we'll be happy to help you with that in that setting as well. Next session, now we've been doing it once a week for a month here. Now we're going to go to doing it once a month, starting with the second Tuesday in October. So on October 14th, we're going to deal with parents, which might be an interesting topic for some of you. We're going to be talking about state tournaments. Maybe you're getting close to qualified. What do you need to do in order to prepare for those? And then we'll be talking about, you know, what do you get out of doing this job? What's your personal reward and satisfaction that you get from doing those? So I think those will be really interesting topics for next time as well. So we just one last time, if you have any questions, we'll go to them. Otherwise, I'll pause here. Okay. Well, then I thank you for coming. I'm going to stop the recording.